On a cold winter day in Japan, a woman settled into her quarters after a long day of teaching. However, her evening would be anything but peaceful. In her toilet, she would find a floating shoe, one that she would discover belonged to the deceased man trapped inside her septic tank. What unfolded after that led to local unrest and conspiracy theories denying the official story. Today, we're investigating the Fukushima Toilet Death. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force. Before we begin today's episode, Fredo and I just wanted to address our second Indieversary, which, Fredo, is this Wednesday, June 3rd.
Absolutely amazing. You started from a scary time.
Dude, yeah.
You know, not knowing if the task force would be there to catch us, and you guys did. And now we're years into this, being cradled in your soft arms.
Strong arms.
Just really strong, though. Like possibly vascular, a little too strong. Might want to get tested for steroids or something like that. I'm not quite sure about the task force arms right now.
Whatever you're doing, just keep it up. Because genuinely, I remember those days when you, me, and Christian were sitting in a room before the shutdown of our previous home. And we were like, you know, we didn't know where this would go. We were like, let's at least try to finish out the year and go out on our terms or what have you. And now it's 2 years since we went independent. So Task Force, we just wanted to say again, thank you so much. If you want to support us now, you can do so at redwebpod.com. But whether you've supported for 2 years, we're almost at 6 years, Fredo, or even just like 6 minutes, we really appreciate you being here, allowing us to stay true to ourselves, explore the unknown, and also just like have a good time over on the Patreon page. I love Fredo's movie club and break room and all sorts of stuff going on over there.
Yeah, support what you love. Like, you know, it's just us doing this. And so, you know, it's all up to you guys. And we're flourishing because of you guys.
Yeah. So thank you once again. And with that said, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the unknown. I'm your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
What do you mean, man? Like, what do you mean?
I was so eager for your first reactions to this one.
Like, just so out there of a story. And of course, it's like there's a conspiracy behind it.
Always.
But like the shoe came up through the toilet?
The shoe was seen in the toilet, and we'll talk about...
How does that...
Listen, I'll take you deep down that toilet and tell you everything that's happening here.
How wide is the toilet?
Good question. I'll get that. How deep is the toilet? We'll get that too.
Like the pipes must... Like what?
It is... Okay, I'll address that up front because it is a pretty gobsmacking situation. Okay, a normal toilet, you got like a little, you know, PVC pipe that you flush down through and off it goes. This is a simple toilet. It is a U-shaped structure. So it is like a squatting toilet that goes down into a septic tank that has another kind of access point outside. So it creates a U-shape, and you would pump that septic tank empty periodically. So it's a very simple version of a toilet, not so much like the modern plumbing that you might be thinking about.
All right, so then that solves that in my head.
Otherwise, it's a very tiny shoe.
Right. Very tiny. But then also, I guess, you know, like, I don't know, open the septic tank. Is there not, you know, a person in the tank? But I guess, like...
We got a man in the tank.
I'm very interested to see how or why it's turned into a whole thing.
It is a very interesting predicament, and this case is wrought in all of the discussion with the knee-jerk reaction of a guy being in a toilet and what the implications might be. But as we kind of like, I'll unfurl this case with all the details that we have. Again, it's one of those cases that, especially due to time and translation issues, there are some blind spots in the case. And so we're going to kind of highlight some of those so we can be honest about the case. But then, of course, when you get to the theories, when you get to the public outcry about the official response, because officially this case is closed. There is a solve in the official records, but what are the conspiracy theories? Why do people doubt the official record and report and all of that? That's where the case really starts to get interesting. Because otherwise, yeah, you would just assume what the police concluded would be, bang, that's it. It's a very interesting case. And of course, the name is very shocking. Toilet death. It doesn't sound very poetic in any way for anyone to die in a toilet, but that's what we're working with.
No, yeah. But then I guess like if you, I'm assuming like, someone got murdered and then shoved into the septic tank or whatever, they're gotta be found, right? At some point in time.
Maybe,
Yeah. I'm very interested to see like the thought process behind that, if that pops up or anything like that. It's just because I'm like, how did you think that wasn't going to become an issue, a public issue?
Right. Someone's going to find that. That's, I think, a very interesting thing that you've already latched onto is, why was this person down there? And if it was to stash a body, it's so obvious because the way this toilet works, you would see it. So hold on to that question as we kind of unfurl this one. Of course, Task Force, if you want to support us directly, there's many ways to do that. One, you can go to store.redwebpod.com. We got some merch for moms and people that love moms, our newest stuff. We also have all sorts of other goodies over there. You can go to redwebpod.com, support us directly. That is our Patreon page. You get all sorts of, you get this podcast ad-free, lots of exclusives like this week's movie club on the movie Hush, which we just recorded. Fredo, it was a phenomenal film.
Great.
You watched
film.
it for the first time.
I did. It was a great film, and if you're into like slashers or thrillers, totally worth the watch.
Yeah. If you know the name Mike Flanagan, hop over. It is a great movie to watch. And then Christian turned us on to, there's a different cut of this movie that we had no idea about called, what was it called, Christian?
The Shush Cut.
The Shush Cut.
Yes.
It's black and white.
Black and white, removes most of the score of the movie and then redoes some of the sound design. And it amplifies the experience. Mike Flanagan and Kate Siegel, the director, writer, and star, have said that that's their preferred version.
Dang, I have so much FOMO now having not seen that one. Anyway, so we talk about that this Friday, redwebpod.com, or you could simply review the podcast, share it with a friend, share it with your mom. We are mom's favorite podcast and the #1 movie podcast about mysteries. And a real quick note for this episode, it does have some sensitive topics, so if you'd like those, they are in the description. All right, well, with that said, let's dive into the toilet. Okay, I had to say it. It is February 28th, 1989, Fredo, and an elementary school teacher named Yumi Tanaka noticed something odd after returning to her teacher's housing in the small village of Miyakoji, Japan. So to give you an idea here, the elementary school is a bit unique. It's for a small village, and her housing is pretty basic, but it's like right there on property. So that's where we're at. And at the time, Miyakoji is a very small, quiet village. It's in the Fukushima prefecture, and what makes it complicated when you look back on this town is the fact that in 2005, it merged with a bunch of other villages to create the city known as Tamura. So it's kind of hard to look back through the annals of history and really delineate some of the name changes of things.
Okay.
But I wanted to figure out, okay, it's small, it's quiet, how big is it? I think in 2003, the population was around 3,100. And so you can imagine in 1989, it's give or take about that size. So Tanaka was a teacher, like I mentioned, at the elementary school there in the village. And after she finished teaching that day, she decided to use her private bathroom in her teacher's quarters around 5 p.m., though some sources say it was later around 6. We do have an image of Tanaka's teacher housing, so you can get an idea of what this housing looks like and kind of where we're at in this first image, Fredo.
Oh, wow. It's an old photo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a really simple house, thin walls, single story, maybe a little attic you got going on there. Very straightforward.
Yeah, rudimentary, kind of cabin-like, but it's got everything you need. Nothing like, no bells and whistles or anything, but pretty standard. And Task Force, as always, if you want to watch the video version of the podcast, head to Spotify or to YouTube, or if you want the images on social media, at RedWebPod on Instagram. So like I said, and you know I like to do this, I want to be forthcoming about the gaps in our knowledge here. There's the discrepancy on time, which isn't a game changer, 5 p.m., 6 p.m., but there's a small difference on like what the name of the elementary school was. I've seen it be Miyakoji Village Elementary School or Furumichi Elementary School. I've also seen Dulu Village Elementary School. Either way, we know that we're working with a small local elementary school. Now at this time in Japan, it was common for bathrooms to have what's called squat toilets. Again, I'll have an image for you to reference here. But the idea is that you kind of stand over the toilet and you go to the restroom in the squatted position rather than sitting down on the porcelain throne.
I mean, like, I just don't think everyone's physically capable of doing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Not everybody can have that balance.
Yeah, that's the whole balancing act. I don't know, man. I just feel like you're just making the floor really potentially make the floor messy. That's a very interesting. Yeah.
Put this in the guys' room and you know you're slipping and sliding. I'm sorry, guys, but we got to be honest about the urinal situation. That thing is supposed to be convenient. And why am I dodging puddles? Okay.
It's nasty, man.
It's nasty in there.
I like wipe down my shoes and stuff and like throw them in the wash because it's just like some public restrooms are just disgusting.
Yeah, I need socks for my shoes before I go in these places. Now, I know that, obviously in modern times, when you think about Japan, you think about toilets, you think about bidets and the cleanliness.
Mm-hmm.
But Christian, I'm actually really curious because you know much more about Japan than I do. Is the squatting toilet much more common? Maybe not modern wise, but is this kind of like a frequent kind of toilet structure in Japan? Do you know?
Yeah, they're typically found in older places, older buildings.
Okay.
And kind of as time wore on, they modernized and started having, traditional toilets that you'd see, anywhere else. But squat toilets are still very common. They do have modernized versions. Like I've seen them where, it looks like a everyday version of one. So it's slowly shifted, but they are still very common there.
If I had to guess, I would imagine that this is about ergonomics. It's the same reason why people got squatty potties. So even when you are sitting, you're closer to that natural squatting position of your primordial ape. And so maybe just going in that position is more natural. I don't know. And sometimes, you could bring a handful of leaves in there, make it really feel like... I'm sorry, this is dumb.
It's a handful of leaves. I'm like, you good in there, Trevor? You just hear rustling around and stuff.
I'm eating my paleo diet. I'm crapping outside in the squatting position. I want it to feel like my roots,
Oh, man. I feel like just go outside.
I feel like... Yeah. Okay, so this is the toilet we're talking about. This is the structure we're talking about because it is a relatively rudimentary setup as compared to your typical modern toilet, right? So this toilet, as I mentioned earlier, it's connected to a small sewer tank of sorts. So this squatting toilet goes straight down, and then there's kind of a U-bend. At the bottom is a reservoir where the human waste will go, and then at the other end, it comes back up. And there's a manhole cover there where someone can eventually come and pump that system out every now and then. So it would eventually build up. Somebody pumps it out, et cetera, et cetera. Now you asked about the dimensions and let's talk about that. So the toilet side of the opening was about 20 centimeters in diameter. So just shy of 8 inches. And the outside access point was a little wider at 36 centimeters in diameter or just over 14 inches in diameter. So again, this is sealed with a manhole cover. I have a diagram we can look at later, but I do have an image of the exact pipe system that this case is talking about, because as we'll talk about, it had to be excavated. So take a look at this third image here. So that's just the plumbing part.
Oh.
Agnostic of the toilet in the ground.
They're like big old tubes.
Big old tube? Well, relatively, yeah.
Yeah.
So for this particular image, the left side would be the toilet side. It's hard to tell, but that's what the caption of the image says. And in this image, it's also a replica because it had to be remade. We'll talk about that and why. The right side would be the exterior side. So this gives you a rough idea now of the sizes we're talking about and how big the U-bend is, right? So
yeah, it's very massive.
It's a decent size, but also the two openings aren't too far apart. So essentially, the toilet would be on one side of the wall. Just on the other side is where your manhole cover access would be. So coming now back to the teacher, Tanaka, it's after hours and she felt the call of nature, right? And so as she enters the bathroom, this is where she notices something off. Before she goes to the restroom, she peers down into the opening of the toilet and she sees a black shoe floating down below in the dregs of the water. And so she's like, well, this is very strange. How did this shoe, I don't own this shoe. How did it get into my toilet? And she decides to go around back, which is wise, to check the sewer tank side of this whole apparatus. and she notices that the manhole cover is off. So she looks down in it and she screams in horror because she sees the bottom of a person's feet. Someone is down in this septic tank setup. And so she yells for her colleagues, who then rush to the scene. They confirm what she is seeing, right? They look down in there and they go, okay, yeah, that is a guy or someone. They immediately call police. We don't know exactly when they arrived, but I'm sure it was sometime soon just after, but sometime later on after the scene was discovered, the police arrived. They began excavation efforts. First, they did try to pull the person up out of the pipe, but it seemed almost immediate that this guy was stuck down in there. And eventually, they do enlist the help of firemen because they realized there's not much we can do with the person given the diameter of this pipe and given the position they are. So they get the firemen to essentially start digging it up. They need to cut this pipe system out so they can cut it open and get the person out that way. And this is why I think the toilet parts had been broken off from the house. And so that part was essentially damaged as they went to get the person out. And later on, the father of this person, as we'll talk about, needed to create a replica of that portion of the pipe. And again, we'll explore that. But once it was unearthed, authorities took a closer look, and what they found only seemed to raise more questions, which is already a very confusing scene. But first of all, you've got a man inside a very small septic tank. He's curled up in the fetal position, and his hand seems to be near the opening of the toilet, but otherwise his left hand at least is curled to his chest. His feet are also pulled in, but they're pointing to the outside opening, and he's holding a shirt that's folded up neatly against his chest. Now, to help with this visual, I actually have a diagram of the person down in the tank here if you want to take a look at this. This will also clarify a lot of the dimensions of this entire system.
Whoa. They really did squeeze a body in there.
Yeah, it's very tight.
Yeah, he's kind of in the fetal position with his hands tucked in. Really, the whole body is pinned in there. Like, the feet are up against the wall, the head's up against another wall, his back is on the bottom, pinched in, and then the knees are also tucked in, hitting a wall as well. So there's like no wiggle room in there.
Mm-hmm. Now, what does your instinct say, and this is just me gauging what your thoughts are, about the knee position, right? Assuming whether he came in on his own volition or was shoved down in here, how does one get those knees around that 90-degree turn?
How did he get his knees? Because you think he'd come in through the 36 centimeter side.
Yeah.
Which, because the thicker side, the other side is like also as thick, but it narrows down to like 20 centimeters.
Right.
And so he'd have to come down head first. And he'd come down and I don't know. He tucks his knee without scraping his shins.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the mind-boggling parts of the case, and it's really one of the first cracks in the story because people are of many minds, right? And we'll talk about all the different theories, but the real divide is, did he do this on his own volition, or was this an external party, a third party that did this and then just like violently cranked his feet down in there, which forced him into the fetal position? It is a cornerstone of this particular mystery or the conspiracy here.
Yeah, because it's very much like how you definitely question it. Like, how did you get in there for sure?
It's very difficult, however you slice it.
Yeah.
And so in addition to this expected body, here's a few other things that were noted. One shoe was found, right? She saw the shoe from the toilet side, and it was floating or covering his face was the description. And again, he was found shirtless with his dress shirt neatly folded up, clutched in his hands against his chest, which is just a very peculiar detail.
It is.
And the next part is a bit graphic, but due to the sheer amount of waste here in the septic tank, that's the nature of the location he's found, he had to be washed several times before any sort of physical or forensic examination could happen on his body.
Jeez, I mean, it's true. He's in a septic tank.
Now, I will say many conspiracy theorists point to this exact detail. The fact that he had to be washed several times could offer whoever, right, the man, an opportunity to scrub any sort of forensic evidence off his body or kind of hide evidence, so to speak. But either way, facts are facts. He's going to have to be washed off. You have to. So Forensics looking at the body concluded that his cause of death was, interestingly, not drowning or anything, it was hypothermia. And they noted that he had a circulatory issue in his chest. So basically, he's down in this pipe, it's late winter, he's losing body temperature faster than his body can recover it. And so because of this, your heart, your nervous system, and or your respiratory system can fail. And regarding the circulatory issue, we couldn't really find a whole lot of specifics, though some sources state that he may have suffered from some sort of thoracic circulatory failure. This would lead to positional asphyxia, which is just like a severe lack of oxygen. So your body, kind of in this position in the cold, is just shutting down. It is just failing to thrive. And because of this and the fact that he's in this position for so long, one could kind of see why, like that's why he would have passed away here.
That's wild, because I assumed because of the fact that he was in there, he was just dead and then shoved in there.
Yeah.
Not like, oh, you were alive in there, which is so much more gruesome.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it does seem to indicate. And honestly, I'm glad you pointed that out because, I started getting so in the weeds of the conspiracy theories. Sometimes it's hard to stay grounded in the actual narrative and not like the questions of the narrative. And so if you do take the forensics at face value and you don't say that someone behind the scenes is lying or manipulating, it would seem that yes, this would be where he died rather than, like you said, dying somewhere else and moving into this position. In addition to that, you actually pointed out the idea of maybe getting scrapes on the shins, getting into this. Well, it turns out he did have minor scrapes on his elbows and on his legs, but seemingly no defensive wounds or anything that would indicate a sign of struggle. A defensive wound being like scrapes on your dominant hand, certainly like on your palms, like if your hand's out defending yourself and someone is slashing or whatever. Could be fractured forearms, sometimes cuts on your feet, things that, you're trying to push someone away.
Got it.
And it doesn't seem like any of that is on him. So again, if he were attacked, it would have been a surprise. But otherwise, it does seem forensically that this is where he died.
This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Factor. I'm sure you can all relate to this scenario. You get home, you just got off work or finished with your day. You're hungry, but you're exhausted, and you have food in the kitchen waiting for you to cook, but you just don't have it in you. Enter Factor. They solve that problem with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs delivered right to your door. And they have a good variety. They have meals built around your goals, whether that's weight loss, overall nutrition, more protein, or GLP-1 support, even strength and workout recovery with their Factor's Muscle Pro collection. And the best part? Ready in 2 minutes. Factor shops, preps, cooks, and delivers straight to your door so you have more time for everything you love this spring. I love Factor meals. There are so many days where I just don't have the time or the energy to cook something, and being able to just throw a Factor meal in the microwave and have something nice, healthy, and delicious ready for me in a couple minutes is a blessing. Head to factormeals.com/redweb50off and use code redweb50off to get 50% off and free daily greens per box with new subscription only while supplies last until September 27th, 2026. See website for more details. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Rocket Money. Have you ever had a surprise subscription charge hit your bank account? Because I know I have, and it's a bit embarrassing to see how much money I've accidentally wasted over the years, over the months, however long it's been. Enter Rocket Money. Rocket Money can track subscriptions and actually has the ability to cancel unwanted ones within the app with just a few taps. It's actually saved users over $800 million in canceled subscriptions. The app also focuses on clarity and ease of use. It can consolidate your checking, your savings, your loans, and investments into a single dashboard to give users a clear view of their financial picture. I love Rocket Money. It is something I desperately need in my life because, man, tracking finances is a bit of a headache sometimes, and being able to just have it all in a clean, easy-to-use dashboard and have that help with the subscription cancellations, it's wonderful. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/redweb. That's rocketmoney.com/redweb. rocketmoney.com/redweb.
Now, stacking on the tangibilities here, the body had a level of rigidity to it. We've all heard of rigor mortis. This is the post-mortem stiffening of the body due to the depletion of ATP in the muscle cells And because of that, no ATP, the muscle cells become very stiff and they lock your body up. So from this, forensics analysis kind of presumed that he died somewhere like 2 days prior to being found because of just like his level of decomposition and kind of where his muscles were at. This would make it February 26th that he would have died, which for all intents and purposes, that was a Sunday that year. Now, I wanted to look more into rigor mortis because I don't often hear about it very often. According to Britannica, rigor mortis sets in typically between 2 to 6 hours after death. It peaks very quickly at 12 hours after death is when it's at its maximum stiffness, the body. And then it fades over time. So somewhere between 24 and 48 hours, it starts to dissipate as those very muscles that are tensed up begin to decompose and can no longer hold that very tight stiffness.
That makes sense. It wouldn't just be tight and, oh, okay, yeah.
Which is funny because I don't know if it was cartoons or like movies as a kid, but for some reason I had this in my head that when you die, you just become a plank. You just become this like stiff board.
Yeah.
But I mean, you do.
I mean, you just see it in movies all the time where like, they have a tight grasp on something. Someone's a pry their, hands open, become stiff and dead.
It's a very good visual thing for movies, but it doesn't last very long. So they could tell, ultimately it had been about 2 days that he had died. Now, quickly, the man was identified as 26-year-old Naoyuki Kano. We do have an image of this gentleman as he was when he was alive. Now, what's interesting as you take a look at his face here, his surname has also been reported as Sugano and Kano, but regardless, he worked nearby at the nuclear power plant, and that will play a key detail in one of the conspiracies.
Did he know too much? Did he know something he wasn't supposed to know? Or there's some shady stuff going down at this power plant?
Could be.
I mean, the photo of him, he has a nice, big, fluffy fro of hair.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a suit. He looks, a very well put together young man. Yeah, nothing comes off as alarming or looks like a normal guy.
I mean, otherwise, just a regular guy until one day wound up here. Now, police ruled this death accidental, though it's unclear when exactly this decision was made, when this call was made. They stated that he was likely a peeping Tom and had entered the tank to spy on her as she was using the restroom. Now, by the end of March 1989, just over a month after the discovery, the case was filed as solved, and this was the official report.
So, I mean, just for the future, I'm gonna let you guys know right now, I would never be doing some wild stuff like that, okay? You find me somewhere weird, it's because I got shoved down there, okay? Not because I was trying to peep on... Like, what?
Listen, a guy who's got to defend himself like that, Christian, I don't know how you feel like when someone comes out so strongly saying, I wouldn't do something like that, let me just put that caveat out there. It almost makes me think maybe he would do something.
Yeah, we didn't have the idea in our heads, man. You put the idea
now,
there.
I just feel like I just need to make it perfectly clear, have some clear lines of dialogue. It's like, oh no, man, I think he was peeping. That's why he was paragliding up there above the new beach. I'm like,
paragliding.
I was running for my life or dying heroically. Also, probably in a duster.
Oh, yeah, he's in a duster looking cool, but there's a non-zero chance it's in its septic tank, though.
Nah, I mean, that's because I got put in there. 100%.
Yeah.
It's fine on anybody who would do such. It's wild. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like, that's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate.
I mean, sure, maybe he was, but also it's just like, man, to be like, you passed away, you're down there. But then he was alive when he was down there, so I don't know.
Yeah, and hold on to this one, because again, I'm not out here to character assassinate a man I've never met in my life, and I've only seen his image once. Like, we'll talk about this in more detail. It's going to be the first theory we talk about, but before we get there, you need to know that the verdict from the police was deeply unsatisfying to his community. I mean, Naoyuki was very well known amongst everybody in the village, and he was a very active member of his community. He worked at the nuclear power plant, part of the maintenance company, I should say, and he was active in the village youth club. He also reportedly excelled in public speaking, so he had a lot of charm, a lot of riz on him, which so do nefarious individuals, but, he enjoyed poetry, he enjoyed music composition. These are all things that is vivid in the minds of the village. Now, this doesn't discount the call from the police, but it makes it much more difficult for the village community to kind of believe it or want to believe it. And this is the foundation with which we'll talk about the other theories. All in all, he was ultimately viewed as a standout member of the town, known for always being willing to help a neighbor in need. And that doesn't really, connect well with the idea of like violating someone's privacy and doing something a little bit more perverse. So as I kind of implied, it's for those reasons that the villagers couldn't accept the police's conclusion that he was some sort of creeping out, peeping Tom, looking at Tanaka, climbing down through a literal pipe of feces in order to do so. And their doubts raised many questions. I'm going to go through all these questions with like some meandering, and then at the end I'll come back and button them all up so you know what the list of confusing elements are.
Okay.
But it seemed to many people that several of the factors just didn't line up. For starters, people wondered how he ended up in the tank in the first place, right? Let's go back to the shape and the size. This U-shaped bend is a very it's not huge, but it's not small. At the end of the day, for a body, it's quite shallow, and the opening is like 14 inches, maybe 14.2 inches, 36 centimeters. It would have been nearly impossible for anybody to climb in from the toilet side because that's like almost half. It's 20 centimeters,
yep.
7.8 inches. So like we know that it likely didn't go down that way, but even still, like 14 inches is difficult for your average gentleman to go squeezing down into.
Yeah, it's, we saw from the photos, it's tight.
In fact, now Yuki's shoulders were approximately 40.6 centimeters, so 16 inches in diameter, or wide. And obviously you don't need to go diving in without like flexing. You can kind of fold your chest in as much as you can. But it's still, though, a lot of people are saying this would be extremely difficult for anybody with that kind of shoulder dimension or certainly more to fit down into this small space.
Right. I love the fact that they got the dimensions and they're figuring it out. And also, like, for someone who's like, oh, I want to peep in, I'm going to squeeze in, like, that's a big hurdle to get through.
It's a very dedicated hurdle to get through, and it would point to a very sexually frustrated man in order to push through something so recklessly, and that is very valid. It's possible that is the case. But check out this next image. I don't know who this gentleman is in particular, but I do know Naoyuki's father built a replica of that side of the pipe out of wood in order to demonstrate just how tight, like, getting into it would be, almost to kind of clear his name and say, this is essentially impossible.
Look at that, man. Like, already his one shoulder is half in, the other shoulder is still popped out, and he's tight. He's like pinned in.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine like getting down there and be like, you know what? I'm so lonely. I really, really want to see this. And then pin yourself in there and contort yourself. Like, oh no, man, that's a big mental hurdle to get through.
It is a big pill to swallow.
But it seems like also like he was alive when he was down there.
At least for some time, we don't know how long.
Yeah.
The timeline starts to get a little hairy because, and we'll talk about it, he wasn't seen by his father or anybody that we know for a few days prior. So again, more wiggle room for conspiracy, but from our understanding, from the official conclusion, yes, he was still alive as he was in the tank.
Yeah, no, it's all so weird.
Yeah, it is very weird. And a lot of people are also pointing to the fact that they're like, look, you had to dig the pipe out in order to get him out.
Yes, good point.
You couldn't pull him up out of the pipe, so why would he be able to get into the pipe? But then I'm sitting here, I'll be honest, like, maybe it's a situation where going in one way, like a fish hook. It goes in easy one way, it comes out hard the other.
Yes.
Because clearly he's in there. It's not like someone dug this up, built him into it, and dug it back down in there. Like,
no, yeah.
Somehow he got down this pipe. That's just facts.
Yeah, I guess. And there wasn't any like broken bones or scrapes or anything, like he was like just shoved in there.
Just scrapes on his elbows and legs. And I mean, this is where you could say anyone's a liar, but we don't have the forensics analysis that says broken or dislocated shoulders or anything else like that. No.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like he was just like jammed in there.
Yeah, scrapes.
I feel like there'd be a bunch of bruises, points in which they're like, maybe he has some fractures because they're just like trying to jam him in there. Like, I don't know.
Right, that's what I would think. Or more scrapes. I'm surprised there weren't scrapes because he was shirtless on his like shoulders.
Oh, yeah.
Did he get down in there with his shirt on and then take it off? I don't know, man, because I feel like that would be the highest pressure point, would be your shoulders as you're tightly trying to get in there.
When we're seeing it from the photo, it's like you could barely get like one shoulder in.
I don't know, man. Like I said, there's a lot of thoughts to be had here, but further questioning the narrative that he was willingly entering the tank, people started to ask why he removed his shirt so neatly, folded it, and then brought it down with him, right? You know, for context, like the winters in Japan are known to be quite cold, and on this particular day, the one that he is presumed to have died, there was roughly 20 centimeters or 7.8 inches of snow on the ground. And so, man, okay, if he left it outside, would that be evidence? If he took it in with him, why take it off in the first place? Maybe he took it off because it's easier to get in the pipe, but he took it with him to hide the evidence? Or was this, you know what I mean? Like, you can cut it all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, none of it's straightforward. And all of it's just really weird. Because, I thought there'd be like a dead person in there. And even then, I thought it'd be like mangled up maybe.
Yeah, there's a lot of assumptions we can make that go left, right, and center, but I think what is interesting is that he decided to take his shirt off in the winter while there's snow out, while it's cold, and then climb down in there. Even if that made it easier or what have you. I mean, I'm trying to think, if he was shoved down in there, how did they keep it folded nicely and tucked into his arms?
Yeah, it's all weird. It's all very weird that he's like as nicely packed in as he is, to be honest.
Yeah. I think one thing I could think of is getting in is easier without all the buttons on. And you fold it up and you take it with you because you hide the evidence, but you also take it off because maybe deceptively, I'm going to guesstimate that this septic tank in a house that's not occupied for a few days, we'll talk about that, maybe the septic tank felt warmer than it actually was because, like if you're cold enough, even cold tap water feels room temperature. So maybe he thought he felt in there and he's like, oh, it's warm.
Like that desperate.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe he's just so desperate that there is no logic and there's no sense in like analyzing it that deep. Now, ultimately, I don't think any of these are really bulletproof questions, but they are worth asking the officials and trying to get the officials' takes on because they focus on some key details that do raise some like yellow flags.
Okay.
But there are still some other strange circumstances like the missing shoe, right? Remember, there was one down in the tank. Where's the other one?
Wait, so the shoe would have come up on the 20 centimeter side?
Yeah, so if you think of the U, there's the two entrances and then the bottom like rectangular tank. The shoe was just down there with him. Seemingly, by multiple reports, one said it was covering his face, one said it was floating, but obviously there wasn't enough waste in the tank in order for him to drown. So ultimately, yes, it was just seen on the toilet side, so maybe it went in first.
I don't know how that shoe gets to the other side then.
Yeah. Was it wide enough for it to float around him?
I mean, doesn't seem... I mean, yeah, maybe it's wide enough, but I was just like, how does that shoe get from that tight side of the... Because his legs are coming in last. That's weird.
It's a great question. So, okay, but that's just one shoe. Where's the other shoe? And also, how did he get there? Yuki's car. Let's start with that. The car was found parked near the teacher's housing with his keys still inside the ignition. Specifically, some reports state that the car was not even really hidden, but rather parked in the elementary school parking lot. So it's like, okay, why was it parked in broad daylight if he's trying to peep and not get caught? I'll address some of these questions in the theories with my own take, but
a lot of this doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up. And the biggest part to me is where the missing shoe was. The missing shoe was eventually found, quote, few hundred meters, end quote, from Naoyuki's car, resting on a riverbed in a river that kind of runs not too far from there. So how did his second shoe end up in a river?
Yeah.
Hundreds of meters away.
So now I'm kind of thinking, like, did he get pushed in there? Did he get forced? Was he like threatened to jump in? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. We'll go through each particular lens in the theories here, because there's so many. I have my own like gut instincts and assumptions and what have you, but there's another layer to this. Okay, Tanaka, the teacher, Yumi Tanaka, and now Yuki Kano, they were actually close friends. That doesn't necessarily disarm the crime here. Maybe this is he felt comfortable going after this person or what have you. I don't know. But the fact that they were close friends meant that he would have known a few things, right? He knew that she would have been out of town prior to this incident because she was. She was traveling from February 24th through the 27th visiting family. And so let's contextualize it away from dates and in the week. So she's a teacher. She's traveling Friday through Monday. These are the days that she's out. It would seem that Naoyuki expected her to return on the 28th to resume teaching. That would be a Tuesday. Now, since she was the sole user of that bathroom, which he also would have likely known, it seems implausible that he would have entered the tank on the 26th, the day that he died in there, to spy on her, knowing that she wouldn't be home for 2 more days. It's a pretty long time in the cold to wait.
Yeah, that wouldn't make sense at all. And he has a job, so in terms of just like a place to stay, you know?
Yeah.
We're talking about how it's cold, but I mean, he has a car. He would have just stayed in the car.
Right.
I don't think he got in there willingly, is kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know where I put this in my notes, but the reason why I wanted to break down the days is because I had a thought. Again, I'm going with what ifs, I'm building on assumptions, that's, to be fair. But if she's a teacher, you can assume that she's working Monday to Friday. I know that February 27th, that Monday, at least from a quick search, is not a holiday in Japan, so she would have had work. What if he knew that she was out of town for the weekend but didn't know the days? And so what if he got in there sometime on the 26th, maybe the late afternoon on the 26th, a Sunday, expecting her to arrive Sunday evening to go back to school on Monday. But instead, she waited an extra day, got back sometime late 27th to then go to school on the 28th. And then at the end of that day is when she found him. What if there's just an extra day because he didn't know when she returned and assumed it would be Monday?
Dang, he got in there early though, still.
Still relatively early, but again, if she's coming back for school on Monday, you'd have to think that she's not arriving the day she's going back to teaching. So maybe he popped in there, okay, let me kick off these shoes, throw one in the river for some reason, fold my shirt, climb down in there at 3 p.m. Boom, she'll be here in a few hours. I peep away. I somehow get out. Key's already in the ignition. I'm ready to rumble. You know what I mean?
It still seems like a big stretch.
It is a big stretch, but that's where my mind went. I was like, I was trying to see if there was anything I could build.
Yeah, you're trying to make sense of it. And he could have gotten the dates wrong, for sure.
Okay, before I kind of consolidate these list of interesting questions, there's one last thing here that adds a lot of intrigue. So now Yuki's father was the last to see him, and he says that the last time he saw his son was on February 24th. This raised alarm as to what he was doing those full 2 days before he died. Again, assuming that he died down in the tank and not some sort of getting caught up in something, but he disappeared or was last seen on Friday, found dead in the toilet on Tuesday. It's an interesting gap in our case here that I don't think we'll ever be able to fill out.
No.
Okay, so we kind of, like I said, explored. Let me just give you the rundown, the laundry list of all the community pushback and questions. Okay. He was viewed as an outstanding member of the community. People considered it nearly impossible for him to fit in the pipe. The motive for him going into the pipe wasn't widely believed. And then the questions. Why did he take his shirt off in the cold, and why did he take it down with him? Why were his shoes separated by such a great distance, one being down in the tank, the other being, quote, a few hundred meters away in a river? Why was his car nearby if he was trying to be secretive? Why were his keys still left in the ignition? Why did he climb in so early, like you said? If he knew that she would come back on the 28th, that's a long time to wait down in there. And where was he and what was he doing between the 24th and his death, presumed forensically, on the 26th? Ultimately, we will never know, because the case was officially closed in 2004. And I was going to save this for the conclusion here, but ultimately, this case is long past Japan's statute of limitations, and so it can never be reopened again. Even for murder, because I think all cases of murder before 1995, I don't want to misspeak, but I know 1995 is a particular cutoff for like a new law, statute of limitations, and then it's 35 years from there, I think. Something like that.
I mean, it's a good amount of time.
Actually, Christian, I don't want to misspeak. Is the murders statute of limitations like indefinitely starting at 1995, but was 35 years prior to that? I don't know. If you mind checking that out. But you're right, Fredo. It's still a good amount of time. But yeah, it's not going to be reopened. And while Christian looks that up, since 2004, the case being closed, petitions to reopen this case have gained over 4,000 signatures, which would be more than the village worth of people there.
Yeah, that's a lot of signatures. But I mean, like, even if they petition, does that do anything though?
Not necessarily,
Right.
especially legally now that it can't be reopened, but it does show the fervor from the community to say, hey, we understand that you have a conclusion here. We think you should reinvestigate this before the statute of limitations is hit, because all of us kind of universally agree something else happened here. So it's up to then authorities to, it's not a legally binding petition, but it's up to authorities if they listen to that.
But yeah, I guess like legally they don't have to. And so they just let it be.
Well, I think they'd rather have an answer in a closed case than open it up and have an unanswered or an unsolved case,
Yeah.
for better or worse, right? Conviction rates in Japan are extraordinarily high, and that is a pretty well-known statistic. But yeah, Christian, let us know if you were able to kind of clarify that statute of limitations answer.
So in taking a quick look, it looks like in 2010, Japan abolished the statute of limitations, although some people are saying it was just revised. Looks like essentially for crimes in which the maximum penalty is life in prison, the statute of limitations used to be 15 years, but is now 30. And
Okay.
then for crimes that would be equivalent to first-degree murder in the U.S., where the maximum penalty would be death, the statute of limitations used to be 25 years. Now there is no statute of limitations.
So, okay, you're totally right. I think it was revised retroactively to 1995. So either way, let me just like distill it. It's past all sorts of known statute of limitations, just factually. 1989. Yeah, wild case. Wild questions. I think valid questions worth exploring. But honestly, as far as we could find at least, officials never answered or quelled any of those concerns or questions.
This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Quince. Summer's coming up, everybody, and it might be time for a refresh on your bedding. Something more breathable, something lighter, something a little bit more comfortable to compensate for all those hot nights we have coming up. That is where Quince comes in. They focus on high quality materials, but without the luxury markup. It is the perfect balance where everything feels elevated, but still effortless. Quince has everything you need to upgrade your bed for summer. They have lightweight sheets, airy linen shams, and duvet covers in seasonal colors and timeless patterns like stripes and soft neutrals. Everything at Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They work directly with ethical factories and cut out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality, not brand markup. I have a Quince comforter, and it has become my go-to blanket in this house. It is so comfortable and soft and yet airy. It's not too heavy. It is truly the perfect balance. And it's not just bedding. Quince has really become a destination for elevated essentials across fashion, home, beauty, and beyond, making it easy to bring a more premium feel into everyday life. Elevate your summer bedding. Go to quince.com/redweb for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/redweb for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/redweb. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by BetterHelp. For some people, summer is the best season. Travel picks up, school's out, adventure can become the focus. But for others, juggling it all can be tough, and it can lead to a sense of feeling overwhelmed. That's where therapy comes in. Therapy can help people better understand their needs, feel more confident setting boundaries, and create a version of summer that actually feels good. Therapy is such a wonderful tool that everybody deserves a chance to have access to. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 6 million people globally. And it works, with an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for a live session based on over 1.7 million client reviews. BetterHelp therapists work according to a strict code of conduct and are fully licensed in the US. And BetterHelp does the initial matching work for you so you can focus on your therapy goals. If you aren't happy with your match, you can switch to a different therapist at any time. You don't have to say yes to everything this summer. Find support in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/redweb. That's betterhelp.com/redweb.
Do you have any thoughts before we dive into the theories, or are you just eager to kind of like...
No, I'm eager to get into the theories just because so far it just seems like at least the authorities are leaning towards like he just went in there himself. I'm like, how did this, like, how is that possible, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very valid question, and let's talk about that. So that theory, the peeping Tom theory, is the one that says that the police got it right out of the gate. Support for this theory comes from the fact that there's no indications of foul play on the body, only scrapes on the elbows and legs, which forensics presumed were from entering the pipe. Now, here's what's interesting. Naoyuki himself was never reported to have shown any sort of perverse behavior or perverted behavior, any sort of voyeurism or anything like that, but there was unfortunately one or two trends of this type. I won't dive into the weeds of this, but through the 60s into the 80s, there was like a peeking up the skirt kind of phenomenon happening. But then also in the 80s, apparently there was like a groping and sexual harassment kind of, I don't want to say trend is the wrong word, but maybe phenomenon happening. And so culturally, it could fit the time. But again, a lot of people point to the fact that this seems so out of character for Naoyuki. But I do want to attempt to pass this theory through the community's questions to see what possible assumptions we can make, to see, again, I kind of did this along the way, but I wanted to see if any of this passed the vibe check because police didn't answer them. Obviously, we can't do it definitively, but I want to explore it. So, rapid fire, the shirt. Maybe to enter the pipe more effectively, he took his shirt off. It could have been deceptively warm down in the septic tank, and so maybe he didn't think he needed the shirt. Why would he take the shirt? Maybe to hide the evidence if he was going to be peeping on anybody and didn't want to be found out before he could do the deed. But then you ask about the car. Why is the car there nearby? Is it a getaway car so that way if he is or when he is found, he can get up out of the pipe? I don't know how, but he gets up out of the pipe, runs to the car, keys are already in the ignition, and he's just ready to rumble. I don't know. But as far as the tight squeeze, this is the biggest question, because either way, he's down there. So many have said it's possible that he may have been flexible enough to kind of contort himself down into the pipe more readily than your average person. This is an easy assumption to make, and it's a common discussion across many of the internet discussions on this mystery. But like I said, Naoyuki's father created a replica of this pipe and tried to demonstrate the impossibility of it himself. Yes, it's a biased source. It's a man trying to clear his son, but at the same time, you know, it's a worthy exercise.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like even then it's a worthy, right, I agree, worthy exercise. I'm just like, man, you gotta be like some kind of contortionist.
Yeah.
To just get in there like that. And I don't know. I just feel like, I don't think he had this hidden talent of being a contortionist, you know what I mean? It's still such a tight space. Such an extreme to do something like that. I mean, granted, yes, there was that kind of stuff being rampant in terms of people trying to do sexual things, but I'm like, I never know. It's an extreme, but who knows?
Yeah. I mean, again, if you assuming the truth of the theory, you know, people will go through some dramatic hoops in order to do some perverse stuff. I mean, simple as that. But again, it doesn't recuse them of the crime.
True.
Because I'm not here to clear anybody, but it is it's worthy of the analysis of like how he got in there and all of that. I don't know. The biggest thing to me, the biggest smoking gun for this particular theory is the fact that the manhole cover was left off. Because if he were hidden in there, I would assume somebody would have replaced that manhole cover. If it was him getting in there intentionally, one could probably surmise that it would be nearly impossible for him to then reseal the whole shebang.
Right. It's a good point.
Because as far as I can tell through various sources, through various translations, it does seem that the manhole cover was off and that like the teacher came over, saw it was open, looked down in, and that's how she saw his feet. Now this then comes back though to the dates. Okay? So he's a close friend of the teacher's, to Yumi's. If he knew she was out of town, did he know the dates specifically? I think that is an assumption people make. If you go out of town, I mean, I guess I work with you, but if a good friend of mine goes out of town, I'm not always going to know the whens and wheres of, maybe I know the day, but not the time. there is a valid question. Why did he get in so early if he knew she was coming back on the 28th? But I think there's wiggle room that maybe he assumed she would be back the day prior, and so then the 26th kind of becomes logical in order to peep. The shoe in the river, though, man, I don't know.
The thing is, there's just small little details all over the, like, again, I know, especially right now, the theories are leaning so hard that he got in there, but man, that's a big hurdle to get through right now for me.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've steeped in this peeping Tom theory quite a bit. And again, it's hard to move on because there's so many things to think about and kind of wager as to what might be going on. Like is the car an escape vehicle? What happened? Did he care if he was seen? We don't know. Other than all of this, it's hard to attempt an answer to some of these questions, especially when there's a huge gap in the records of his whereabouts in the 2 days leading up to his death. So ultimately, the stacking of enough inconsistencies in this theory have made this theory the least common theory among many. I think that's worth mentioning. Let's move now into the more conspiratorial realms and why they exist, because there's some mind-blowing stuff in here. So some have speculated that Naoyuki's cause of death was a little bit more sinister and stemmed from political tensions. Around this time, the village had an intense election for the position of village head. Some villagers supported the nuclear power plant where Naoyuki worked, believing it was good for the economy and provided jobs to the village. Others, however, were concerned about the adverse health effects. Some have wondered if Naoyuki may have uncovered some sort of election secret, making him a target for murder. Other sources have reported that Naoyuki was friendly with a candidate named Tadashiro Watanabe. Naoyuki supported Tadashiro until he reportedly learned of corruption happening behind the scenes. It appears that Tadashiro had been buying votes, again, by reports here, and this was reportedly how he got elected as village head. So Naoyuki, feeling betrayed by this, he's like, hey, you were my friend, I supported you, now I hear you're buying votes. He starts to become outspoken about all of these facts, or these again, reportedly details. But it would seem that Tadashiro, despite buying votes, had enough supporters regardless of all of that, and therefore most people simply didn't believe Naoyuki. In fact, people began to turn on Naoyuki for being so outspoken about the popular candidate. He's essentially calling for election interference, and most people, paid or not, didn't believe him. In 2026, you can kind of see how this would easily become a very heated situation and lead to a lot of unrest. So because of this, it is a little bit of a leap, and there's not a lot of clarity on this next part, but because of this, many people, or some people, have speculated that this incident may have led to Naoyuki's death. It could be suicide, it could be organized murder from Tadashiro, or it could be an impassioned murder from one of Tadashiro's supporters. That part is left a little bit more ambiguous.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, how are we gonna tie this together? We're tying it in there as like this is what drove him, which is like interesting, and that's a very particular, like, suicide. I think is a very interesting choice there, because it's just, would that be the way that someone chooses to go?
Yeah.
Now political reasons. Was he forced in there? It's like, get in that hole, whatnot. But then why would they cover it up?
Well, oh my gosh, what if they wanted it to look a certain way? What if they wanted to make sure it looked like the soon-to-be official version Peeping Tom? What if it was all, again, it's all what if. It's all assumption.
Yeah, it's all assumption.
That's the worst part about conspiracies, is that when it's stuff like this, you can go, I can make sense of it. But does that mean it's, You
can, if you want to, fall down each little rabbit hole.
Yeah. So that one was interesting. Again, given the heightened political climate of today, you can kind of like understand it a little bit, because otherwise it might feel outlandish. But hold on to some of the nuggets of that, because this next theory, I think, evolves from that even further. So others have speculated that Naoyuki might have been silenced after uncovering secrets at his work. After his death, it was revealed that the nuclear plant had been in talks to expand. So this expansion, right, building more reactors, more power output, etc., the expansion of the nuclear plant was threatened by a major mechanical incident that happened several weeks prior to Naoyuki's death. on January 6, 1989, wherein a massive recirculation pump impeller shattered in one of the reactors. This required the reactor to shut down for quite some time. There's not a whole lot of other information about this, but suffice to say, from what I could find, this created a landslide of PR and financial disaster for the power company, and this is where corporate conspiracy comes in. So they blamed human error, basically pointing to the mechanics team and saying, this one's on you guys for letting this happen. And well, we'll unpack that here in a second.
Interesting.
So 5 weeks after this incident, a friend and co-worker of Naoyuki's, who also happened to be the head of maintenance at the nuclear plant, unfortunately committed suicide. Then Naoyuki's death came exactly 2 weeks after that. So now you can start to see there's a bit of a trend happening here.
Yes, there is.
While it's unclear what specifically Naoyuki might have discovered, many in the community considered this to be a strange pattern and thought the circumstances surrounding both deaths were quite mysterious. Building on this, many suspect that this human error excuse was simply that, an excuse, and used to cover up the company's negligence of ignoring a known mechanical defect. We've seen this in many air disasters that we've covered, but basically, if the mechanical team is saying, this thing is old or has a known defect, it needs to be replaced, and the company is saying that's going to be costly, ignore it, and then that thing fails, in order to save face, the company's going to then blame the people who were kind of pointing it out.
Wild. I mean, the fact that someone committed, I mean, it just, there seems to be pretty heavy evidence, right? That like stuff was going on there.
Reportedly, I don't want to speak as if this is raw facts, but there's a few different titles. It all comes through different translations, but ignoring his exact title, I do believe he was the head of the maintenance team, and his name is kind of redacted out of respect for the bereaved, but he was the lead of the mechanics team, and he did commit suicide just a few weeks, I think 5 weeks after the incident. And many people read into this and said, well, is this because he's taking this blame and it's really hard on him? Or some other people then say it's because his team was negligent and air quotes guilty, and so that guilt weighed on his conscience. I can understand how you see it both ways. But what's interesting is that the general consensus is that if any of this had gotten out, that the human error was a cover-up and that it was actually the company's fault and not the mechanics' fault, if any of that had gotten out, their plans for expansion would have been crushed. And that's why people think that Naoyuki was just one of 2 people silenced in the aftermath of the nuclear plant incident. So maybe one or both of them were silenced, maybe one or both of them knew the truth of this. Naoyuki being friends with this maintenance worker, maybe he was told. And so from there, people presume that Naoyuki's body was hidden or even staged to make it look like he was a peeping Tom in order to make this an open and shut case.
Yeah, so I guess I told him to just like get in there, and then his shoe maybe slipped off while he was trying to jump in there, and then they just threw that shoe in the river.
Oh no, I can picture that. Oh man.
They left his car there, set it up, like he wanted to be there.
I hate that I can make sense of that too,
Yeah, I make sense of that, yeah.
That is one of the prominent theories, is that there was some sort of he knew something. Some people have said that he was lured out there, and that's why, or like you said, coerced to go down in there. Some people think he was killed and then staged, especially since he knew this teacher. It's really hard to say, but honestly, I had a natural inclination that I wanted to kind of tie this into the previous theory because they feel like they rhyme a little bit. So it's worth knowing that nuclear plants in Japan do pay subsidies to local areas, like this plant would have paid to this village, especially if it were expanding. Those subsidies would have increased. So it's not impossible for my mind to connect the dots and say, what if a local candidate, knowing this money might be coming, and if he won this election as village lead, could kind of help coax this expansion along, decided to invest in himself. Let me pay people to vote for me. They will then be on my side because they have money in the game. And then I'll make sure that this expansion comes to fruition, in which case more subsidies come to the village. I get more subsidies. Maybe I can pocket more of that money. And then now Yuki is over here going, I put village over everybody. I found out about this. I'm trying to turn on this candidate, and I know about the power plant from my friend. And pretty much everybody except for the common person has a motivation to end his life.
Oh, man, the political game and setting people up.
Yeah. Yeah,
I could see that. I mean, honestly, I lean more towards that than anything, I would think. They're just the political powers and ties.
That's tough. That's a hard one to kind of... All of these are hard pills.
Yeah.
You either have somebody who betrayed the trust of the entire village because they were one type of person, and then they did something that violated someone's privacy in a way that shatters that trust. Or you have on the other side, they maintain that trust, and they realize that village leadership was working with a sinister power plant that had hidden some sort of like failure and blamed somebody else, and somebody died from that. And he wanted to expose all of this, and instead he became, he was punished for it so that they could go on with power, money, and control, or what have you.
Yeah, continue. Yeah.
Yeah. Woof. That's wild.
I mean, but it makes the most sense.
It makes some sense. And that's why this case is just like, it is solved, but it's not popularly solved. It is, so many people are unsatisfied with the outcome of this particular case. That's why it's considered unsolved, and that's why it's still like so on people's minds, right?
I would say so. I mean, there's no clear-cut answer here, and it's so ambiguous, and there's so many little details, and it's so hard for it to all piece together. I think that's what makes it so intriguing as a mystery in a case.
Yeah, long story short, man, you got another frustrating case on our hands. That's kind of the MO of this podcast, though, You get cases that are so close to an answer, frustratingly so, and will never hit that finish line. Then you have cases like this that you feel like, cool, we have some closure. I think that, this might make sense. Wait a minute, something ain't right.
Yeah.
And then it just smells fishy from there.
Yeah, I agree. It's rough, man. That's just the nature of the game, and that's why they're mysteries.
Yeah, that's why they're mysteries.
Which is why I greatly appreciate when, we do have cases like, oh, actually this one's solved, or we feel like for the most part this one's solved. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Because there's so many that aren't, and so to get some that are is nice.
Yeah, to get that answer, that little dopamine hit of like, oh, okay, it's nice to know things rather than shatter our trust or knowledge of reality. But you can see now, I want to, now that we're at the close, I want to sandwich this episode. You can see now how it feels one way right at the outset. You saw Fukushima Toilet Death and you're going, huh? And now you can see how deep the well goes.
It just kept going in ways I didn't think it would. I mean, I mentioned this before earlier in the episode, but I thought there'd be a dead body in pieces in there. Not a full person, let alone a full person that was alive while they were in there for some time. And then the whole mystery of like, were they here doing something perverted? Was it this big conspiracy with like where he worked, or the political stuff? And it's just spiraled to this whole thing. I thought it was gonna be like, there's a dead body in there.
Yeah.
Who is it? Who killed him and put him in there? Whatnot? Not like, did he crawl in himself? It's like,
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Wild. Yeah, dude, I can totally get that. There's times where we find body parts and it's always about, okay, what's the road to the suspects? This one blew your expectations up immediately. And so it feels like it gets so tight and narrow that you go, well, I guess I don't know how it could be anything but that, given there's this trend going on, this phenomenon of other perverse things. But then when you start talking about, okay, this is what the community is saying, you start to go, well, hold on a second. I get it now. I get it. But yeah, that's the realm we live in, that frustrating, narrow realm of just a tinfoil hat. You know what I mean? The world is round, okay, everybody? We know that. But the aliens are out there, okay? And they're coming. They're coming. As we come to a close, I want to thank a few of our task force members. Jordan Cartwright as our newest task force member at redwebpod.com. We also have James Russell. Thank you for being a buff scientist. Shout out to you. And then, of course, our squonks for the week. We got Zarathustra, Holster, and Jordan Chase, just to name a few. If you want to join the likes of these fine fellows, head over to redwebpod.com. Or, chuck us up the bat signal, the web signal. If you ever want to, get something solved, we've got a form that we've posted about on our Patreon page where you can submit topics. This one was actually submitted to us by an anonymous task force member. Who knows? Maybe they know more about this case than they let on.
Leading on.
Otherwise, like I said before, you can share this podcast with your mom, with your friends, with yourself. I don't know. Listen again. Just crank it back to the beginning, or review us wherever you listen to us. It's another free way to support us. But with that said, Fredo, thank you for exploring another frustrating and interesting case. But with that said, I'll see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery.